from Yash Chopra taking Amitabh Bachchan from a diwar to right away Kabhi Kabhi, and starting that new phase of his career, to then a similar, thing happening with Shah Rukh Khan between Dar and DDLJ, and then even like later, rise of Saif Ali Khan as a multiplex idol, which is like a little different. I thought that was so interesting, because you would have never thought about those influences, on people's careers.
And of course, he's also the man who changed how weddings are seen in Hindi cinema. And you got his own wedding footage, which was also so lovely.
It was incredible. I remember the day we watched that footage finally, and I was like, I couldn't believe, that we would actually be able to get to use this. And it's, seeing all the stars, like, it's like a guessing who's who, like seeing all the stars in that footage. I think that's what really helped make the series feel special, was just to have all of the access to that never before seen material. Hi, my name is Smriti Mundhra. I'm the director of The Romantics, and you're watching midday.com.
It's the month of romance, and joining us today, we have the director of The Romantics. That's Smriti Mundhra. Hi.
Hi.
And Smriti, congratulations for all the reviews coming your way.
Thank you.
The series comes at an exciting time where Hindi cinema is being celebrated again with the success of Pathaan. So do you feel the timing worked out just right?
We couldn't have planned it better, or predicted how perfect it would be. So yeah, of course, it's a great time, off of the success of Pathaan. And I think people are in the mood to be nostalgic and remember of all the reasons they love movies, So yeah, it's great timing.
And your dad was a filmmaker himself, and of course his wonderful work is behind him. Did that also influence your love for Hindi cinema, and what were your growing up years like?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, my dad was hugely influential in my consumption of Hindi films when I was growing up. I think my earliest memories were of watching Hindi films, and only later when I look back did I realize how many of those films that I really was attached to and loved so much were Yash Chopra films. So that's sort of why I wanted to make this series, was because for me, growing up, Hindi cinema and romance and all of that was Yash Chopra. It was synonymous with Yash Chopra.
And you've got all these icons to open up like never before. I think we've never heard some of the stories that's in your series. So how did you get them so comfortable? That's, it's really interesting actually.
For our interviews, we made sure to be very prepared. We did a lot of research, on the interviews. And I think it also helped that we had people speaking about a filmmaker who is so beloved, someone so beloved as Yash Chopra, and who was so instrumental in each of their journeys. Either his films were influential on them, or he and Yash Raj films like directly had an influence in their careers. So I think for that reason, and also, speaking to people when they're not necessarily promoting their own project, and they just get to be speak as fans of films and as of their own personal experience. I think that helped.
Today, of course, we can't imagine a DDLJ without a Shah Rukh Khan, but that was another revelation, that he had to be convinced to do romance. Yeah. So were there any such revelations that took you by surprise also? Yeah,
there's so many things. I think you sort of take for granted sometimes how these films come together. And I think hearing about all of the intentionality behind all of those decisions, was really, really interesting. From Yash Chopra taking Amitabh Bachchan from a diwar to right away Kabhi Kabhi, and starting that new phase of his career, to then a similar, thing happening with Shah Rukh Khan between Dar and DDLJ. And then even like later, the sort of rise of Saif Ali Khan as a multiplex idol, which is like a little different. I thought that was so interesting, because you would have never thought about those influences, on people's careers. So yeah, there's lots of little revelations like that I found very interesting.
And of course, he's also the man who changed how weddings are seen in Hindi cinema. And you got his own wedding footage, which was also so lovely. So what was that like? How did you manage to get all that?
It was incredible. I remember the day we watched that footage finally, and I was like, I couldn't believe, that we would actually be able to get to use this. And it's, seeing all the stars, like, it's like a guessing who's who, like seeing all the stars in that footage. Yeah, it was really incredible. And it was honestly the first thing after I sort of conceptualized this project was I knew that in order to do it justice, I would need access not only to the films themselves and the music and everything to be able to use that, but as much behind the scenes material as possible. So of course, the first place I went was to YRF and tried to get their blessing, for this project. And thankfully, they were, very excited about it and accommodating. And they basically opened up the archives, for me. So I got to really just play around and look at all of the different behind the scenes things, makings, personal, photos, and that film, like the wedding video, wedding film. So I think that's what really helped make the series feel special, was just to have all of the access to that never before seen material.
And of course, you also had Rishi Ji's last interview, which is also such a big thing. And seeing him with Neetu Ji, and he was just being his candid self,
Yeah.
the side that we loved.
Yeah.
So what was that like?
Oh, it was such an amazing, special experience, and one that I'll never forget, because he was just so at his peak, on that day that we did the interview. He looked amazing. He was in a good mood. He was bantering with Neetu Ji and reminiscing, and had all these amazing, poignant memories to share, but also, was his usual charming, funny self. It was really, really special.
And of course, everyone's talking about how you did the impossible. You got Aditya Chopra on camera. And not just that, you also got him to talk about subjects like nepotism that, normally a person wouldn't be comfortable talking about. Yeah. So how did you kind of convince him to do that?
It was a long journey. It was a long process to convince him, because initially when we started this, as accommodating as a studio was, the one thing that they said was that, don't expect Aditya Chopra's participation, at least on camera. And slowly, we convinced, I convinced him to at least let me record an interview for his personal archives. I said, look at how special it is to see all of these, your parents' wedding video and all of these things that are so meaningful now. We might as well record something so you have it, for future generations, or, whenever you, it's under your control. And so he agreed to that. But then, I started editing that into the series, because I wanted to show him that, you can't really make this series or do it justice, at least, without his participation. And, to his credit, once he sat in front of the camera, it was like his second home. He was so comfortable and expressed himself so well. And really, there was no restriction in terms of what I could ask him or what he would be willing to talk about. He was very, very open.
That's wonderful also. And there's this eternal debate about Bollywood. So what is your take on it? Some love it, some love to hate it. So.
Yeah. Well, I will say I don't use that term anymore since making the series. I did use it, like everybody else, for a long time. Definitely had a little bit of a cringy feeling whenever I would use that term even before, which is, why I even asked the question. But I think recognizing how universally disfavored it is, in the industry, I don't want to use a term that feels derivative, like of another industry, especially when, this industry, the Hindi film industry, is so unique in and of itself, and deserves to be defined on its own terms,
And you are also known to be a filmmaker who does a lot of research, because I was also speaking to Seema Taparia ji, and she was telling me you recorded her for years and years before you all collaborated on 2 projects.
Yes.
Of course, Indian matchmaking, everyone knows, and the series with her daughter as well.
Yeah.
So, how do you keep yourself motivated? Because it's a long period of research before anything comes out of it. So you really need that love and passion for filmmaking. So how do you keep yourself going?
I try to choose topics, and projects that I get really excited about, and that are consistently a process of discovery for me. I want to be learning something, as much as I want, that's the best situation. If I have some, broad idea of a topic that interests me, but then the journey changes even my perception or reveals new things to me. And that's what really keeps it interesting. I think also for an audience, because then you can share something new, with the audience, as opposed to rehashing things that people already know.
And of course, you have other wonderful projects like Never Have I Ever, also which people relate to so much. So does that somewhere come from your own experiences as well, as an NRI?
Yeah.
So
yeah, definitely. Well, Never Have I Ever is Mindy Kaling's brainchild. It's her genius. I was lucky enough that she invited me to direct, on the show. But absolutely, I relate to Devi, the main character, and so specifically to the point that not only was that so much like my experience, as a teenager growing up, Indian American teenager growing up in America, but I grew up in that same area in the San Fernando Valley in Southern California. Like also my father passed away not when I was a teenager, but I lost my father, several years later. But there's so much about that show that I could relate to, the relationship with her mother, very similar to my relationship with my mother, especially, when I was younger. So I was, I connected with it as a viewer, in the first season. And then when I was lucky enough to be invited to join the team of directors, I was very happy to be a part of it.
And of course, we can't let you go without hearing about your upcoming projects. So what more exciting stuff do you have for us?
Well, there'll be a new season of Indian Matchmaking coming out soon.
Okay.
So that'll be sometime in the next few months. And then, beyond that, I think just waiting for inspiration to strike, waiting to see. I like to not, keep myself too busy because, I want to be available for opportunity, whatever comes my way.
So wishing you much more success. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Subscribe to Midday India. Get direct notifications on all our videos by clicking on the bell icon.